This is lecture 2 for week 3, and we'll be talking about schedule planning. If you remember last time, we talked about the planning, whether requirements and the work breakdown structure, and had a small practice exercise involving that. Now that we have that work breakdown structure, we have cost, we can estimate resources, we can talk about the timing of the work. We can now do the project scheduling. And we can see here it includes sequences of activities, duration plan for each activity, and the relationships between the activities. When we talk about relationships, it's whether or not we have conflicts within the activities, whether it's events, event A has to happen before event B can happen, or potentially a resource is tied up and they can't start on a particular task until something else is completed. Those are the types of things we'll talk about. And the book says the project schedule is created after the scope planning has been created by the work breakdown structure and before project resource planning. In reality, this is going on during, in most cases. Um, when we're doing the scoping, we do need to have some type of plan, not only what resources we need, but quite often we need the time box to make sure that it just doesn't keep going on and on and on. Also, it's very unlikely that a project is not going to start thinking about resources and what resources they need, even if they don't have the scoping plan done. So while this is the true definition of what the project should be doing, I would argue in reality that all three of these planning activities are happening in some way in parallel, even though in a true waterfall method you would have these events be done sequentially. So last lecture we talked about the work breakdown structure, and this is just a reminder that for this example, a wedding, we have invitations, food, and bridal, and we have a number of different tasks that we could break down even further based off of those categories. And this is what that would look like, or kind of a scenario where this would look like. Where remember, each of the tasks underneath each number, so example 2.0 food, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, all of those together is 100% of what is categorized under food for the for the work breakdown structure. And there's a reminder there. But I do want to touch quickly on some type of dependencies. And this first one, finish to start, is probably the one that you're going to use the vast majority of the time. And what it says is one activity cannot start until another activity completes. And in this example, we cannot address envelopes until we can actually print the invitations. So we'd have to print the invitations, and then and only then can we then address and mail out the invitations to the wedding. The next one is start to start. And in this example, what we're looking to do is one event has to start, and then sometime after that event starts, a next event can start. Now, it may be a little bit of a time lag. It may be almost immediately after it. But the key here is that the task A, in this case, give toast, does not need to complete before you start serving the cake. And if you guys have been to some weddings like I have, you got 5 or 6 people and it takes 45 minutes to get through all the toast. If they waited till after that to start serving the cake, you're probably not going to get to the dance floor very fast. So in this case, once the toast begin and the toasting begins, people can start serving the cake to your guests. And the last one is finish to finish. And this is where two events, where one and the other essentially finish together. So in most cases in a wedding, they're going to play the song Here Comes the Bride. And that will start up and it will kind of cue the audience to stand up, to be ready. The bride is about to come down and the wedding party is going to come down. But as the song starts, the bride starts to walk down the aisle. And the organist, whoever's playing the music, should kind of look and time it where both of them end at the same time. They come together at the finish versus having some dependency at the start. So, as I mentioned, the first one, finish to start, is by far the one that you'll use the most. But we also have things such as start to start and finish to finish. And a few other things that could be predecessors, external predecessors. Maybe you bought a server, you bought an Oracle database. It's outside of the project four walls. So if there's a delay from Oracle getting you their equipment, it could cause issues for other parts of your project that were not necessarily planned. Discretionary predecessors, stuff that just you want to do because either you as the project manager want to do it, or somebody in the company has some reason to do it, but there is a little bit, if not a lot, of discretionary. And then mandatory predecessors you can't do until something is done. The example we use is restated here as the invitations must be addressed before they can get mailed. So hopefully you understand those different types of predecessors. And when we get into Microsoft Project, we'll start seeing how we can do some of this activity. Few other things that we want to talk about in lead and lags that's used quite often terminology in project management, where a lag is one task must wait in relation to the other. So the first dance is traditionally the bride and the father. Everybody else would wait until after they have their dance before they actually join the dance floor. You wouldn't start typically before the bride and her father have a chance to have that first dance. The next one is more leading, and this is where an example here is serving dinner. Once dinner's served, you can start to prepare your dessert. You don't have to wait until everybody's done eating before the caterers actually start to prepare their desserts. They're able to do that as soon as dinner's served. So this would be considered more of a lead. Couple of other terms though that we're going to get into and are going to be important, especially with some of the assignments that we do. One is a milestone, and a milestone is an important checkpoint. It's usually high level. Many times, stakeholders who aren't day to day part of the project focus on the milestones and how they're doing, and whether or not the target date set will actually be met. And in our wedding example, you can see here some things that are key milestones as part of any wedding planning activity. So these are the things that we want to kind of checkpoint on. There's a lot of activities or potentially a lot of activities that involve these, but from a milestone level, when these are done, then we know this block, this chunk of work for our project has been completed, and we can determine how we are in terms of timing and budget at these key points. I have a video out there on a Gantt chart, and if you guys have ever used Microsoft Project, you've seen a Gantt chart. Most people who use Microsoft Project don't really use the Gantt chart. It is a useful tool, but many people don't really spend the time to learn how to read them. And this is what it looks like. So on the left-hand side, you're putting your tasks, your resources into MS Project for those of you who have used it. And then on the right side, you're going to get something that looks similar to this with these bars. And they extend out either days or weeks or even months. And you're able to kind of see how things stack up with each other inside of a Gantt chart. And like I said, we'll get into this more, and there's also a video to understand the Gantt chart a little bit more inside of the videos on Blackboard. The network diagram and critical path. We're going to be talking about that in a second here, but these are also helpful tools that project teams use and the project manager has at their disposal to understand different aspects of the project and understand when issues and potential risks are on the horizon. When I worked with project managers and on project teams, I referred to it more as a PERT diagram, not so much as a network diagram. So there are some other terms for this. You guys may have a different saying or a slang or acronym at your organization. But what essentially it is a device to graph all of the different activities, understand the paths that these activities take, and to understand which path is critical path and which one has a level of slack in them. So you can see here where we start and we can pick the designer and then pick the printer. Both of these actions can happen simultaneously. But when we do the printer, we've got to design the invitations, we've got to print the invitations, and then we've got to actually address the envelope. And we can't do that until both of these tasks are actually complete. And if we look into it from a math point of view, what we're looking to do is truly define the critical path. This is the critical path is the path that is going to take the longest. And if there's any delay, any disruption to the critical path, the overall project is going to be delayed. Where the other paths are said to have some amount of slack. There's X amount of time. It might be half a day, it might be a month, but there's some amount of time that if there is a delay, you still have time to catch up without impacting the overall project, other than potentially some cost because you may need some additional resources to get caught back up. And if you start to illustrate that, let's look at this, and we'll say this is number of days for right now. And if we start with letter A and move across, you can see at C, we break the path up into three tasks that can be done simultaneously. But if you add all of those up, the critical path really becomes A, B, C, D, E, F, I, L, because all of those paths together are going to take up 10, 18, 22, 24. I think we said days, maybe weeks. So it's 24. Or if we went on the top path, that's going to be 16, 20, 22. And in the bottom is the shortest, which in reverse has the most slack, and that is going to be only 10. So this allows us, by breaking this up, understanding the dependencies, and having some amount of time associated with them, our critical path. And here's the example here. It's spelled out in terms of actually highlighting with the arrows that critical path for this project. Where we talked about the slack, this is the amount of time the other two branches are considered to have some amount of slack, just because of the less duration that we have for the total task to meet up with the other task at L with distributing the directory. Okay. So here's an example where they change things up. If task ask is delayed by less than 2 weeks, it will not delay the completion of the project. And that is because that is the slack number. So on a question, I may ask you, what is the slack for A, B, C, J, K, L? In that case, the slack would be 2 weeks, based off of the total duration of their path and what the path for the critical path is. So I'm going to stop there. This is kind of an example, but I have one I said in Blackboard, and I will move on to lecture 3 where we start talking about resource planning. And I have a few assignments. I have a one out there for a straightforward, pretty simple critical path for a network diagram. I'll be putting a more complex one out there. And along with these lecture videos, I will put one out there at the beginning of week 3 that goes over the assignments to make sure that you're ready for the assignment 2 and any quiz 2 that will be coming up here shortly. Thanks.